It's normally impossible. This is probably very difficult. We're joined tonight by someone who's running for, huh?
Jenna Haig.
I know. State House Representative, District 98. And I'd like you all to give a warm welcome to Jenna Haig. Come on.
I'm sorry I'm giving my back to you.
That's all right.
For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jenna Haig. I am running for District 98 State House. That includes part of Planataion, Davie, and Sunrise as well. So we're talking about Tuesday night, and I actually want to talk about that a little bit. So I know that there's been a lot of talk since our last election about the fraud and our vote doesn't count, and is it really worth doing it if they're just going to be fraudulent anyway? Well, you can see what happened in Virginia when everybody went out and voted, right? So Virginia turned red, and when I say they turned red, they turned really red. Okay, so the Virginia, the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the AG,
Yes.
they all went Republican. That goes to show you how important it is to get out and vote. I know that there's problems with elections. I was a poll watcher in this last election. I saw things happen, right? But if we just resign and say, why should we go do it if there's going to be things wrong? We are literally handing them the keys. And I'm not ready to do that. And I hope that none of you are ready to do that either. So what it means is not only do we have to go out and vote, but we have to go and get all of our neighbors to go out and vote. We have to be engaged on every single level. So we just had a special election, and I know that Planataion is not a part of Congressional District 20, but I can tell you that the turnout was horrible. It was really bad. Not just on the Republican side, it was bad on the Democrat side too, but Republican turnout was really bad. It does not matter, primary or not. Let your voice be heard. It's important. There is another special election coming up in March for Florida Senate 33, and then we're turning around, and in November, there's a ton up for election. Know who's on the ballot. If there's a primary, take the time to get to know these people. Call them, ask them to go for coffee with you, show up where they're speaking, go to their website. And if there's not a primary, still look into them. The old days of just blind faith should be over. Okay, and I'm standing here saying that as a Republican. Don't just get involved when it comes to the ballot box. Be a poll watcher. Be a poll worker. So when I went to vote on Tuesday, because I am in Congressional District 20, I walked in and the poll worker asked to take my temperature. And I obliged, and I said, sure, here's my wrist. And then I asked the question, what happens if my temperature was elevated? And she looked at the woman next to her, and the woman next to her looked at her, and they looked at me and said, I don't know. And they said, nobody went over that in our training. So the room was empty, by the way. I was the only person in there to vote. And I turned to the clerks, and I said, so what's the procedure? If I walked in right now and I had an elevated temperature, how do you allow me to vote if I can't be here? They both said, I don't know. And one of the clerks said to me, well, I guess you would go down to Fort Lauderdale and go to the supervisor of elections office. And I said, what happened if I walked in at 6:50 at night? The polls close at 7. I'm not making it to Fort Lauderdale in time. So she said, I don't know. I said, okay. Well, is this a new procedure? Because I was a poll watcher the last election at that very precinct. I sat there day in and day out at that precinct and poll watched, and we never took anybody's temperature. And her response to me was, well, they did it at some precincts. So that's not allowed. We don't do something at one and not at another. So I said, okay, thank you for the information. I'm gonna make a phone call because I'm actually a candidate. And I'd like to know what I tell my constituents if they walk in and let's say they have a cold and they have an elevated temperature. So I will say one of the clerks actually went out of their way and she picked up the phone. She followed me outside, she picked up the phone, she called the SOE's office. And when she did that, the SOE's office told her you should not be taking anybody's temperature. Okay? So this is why it's important to be involved. Because that thermometer was for the poll workers when they start their day to take each other's temperature and not to take the public's temperature to deny them the right to vote.
What if a special thermometer that says this is a Republican elevated temperature?
Right. So she then went inside and took the thermometer and put it away. But I voted on the day of voting. I didn't vote during early voting. How many people walked into that precinct and had their temperature taken and never questioned a thing? Right? This is why I say get involved. Because when it's not a primary, and we're talking about a seat being on the line, look in New Jersey, right? The governor in New Jersey is being decided based on such a small amount of votes. So now imagine that you're here and somebody's doing something that they're not supposed to be doing and they're turning people away. That's why it's important. Because some of these races are going to be razor thin. And all of us have to be engaged and involved through the entire process. We got notification from some people that signed up to be poll workers. And they got notification from the SOE's office that they cannot be a poll worker if they don't show proof of vaccination.
That was me.
So I have a question for you. Have you gone to try and work and been turned away?
No, when I got the letter, I was all set. I was set to go to the class, set to work, everything was set up. And in fact, I had a friend that was going with me. They lost 2 workers because of what happened.
I'm going to give you a phone number before I leave, because there's a gentleman who is working on our side with the SOE, and he has not been able to prove that anybody was not able to work because of that letter.
Oh, so you have to show up and be turned away.
So,
Did you choose not to?
right, that's the question.
When
Because
when
you didn't
they
get
got the
vaccinated.
letter, when I got the letter, yeah.
Right, but
What
did
else
you-
could I do?
Nothing, you
You
could.
can show up.
Right.
They turn you away.
So I will tell you what has to happen. Somebody has to go to be a poll worker and show up and be turned away. Because the moment that happens is the moment that we can do something.
I wish I'd known. I would have done it.
So we have another one coming up. And I'll tell you this, don't wait until next year. We have special elections coming up, whether it's in your district or it's not, use it as practice. It is so, so, so important.
So who called, did you say if that happened?
So if the SOE turns you away, my card is in the back of the room. Call me or text me. That's also, yep. And I will give you the information to the person for you to reach out to let him know that you've been turned away.
You know, they called me. They needed me to come and work that election.
They don't want you to go,
No.
because you're a Republican, they're gonna want.
Yeah, but they need a Republican. You know why they need a Republican? Because if you have somebody with the, they can't write or can't do something, you have to have a Democrat and a Republican poll worker together watching that person so that there's no
Yes.
influence. So they needed me, and I speak Spanish too.
Our county doesn't follow the rules. If you haven't been paying attention, they do whatever
So-
they want.
So elections are huge, right? Elections are really big. But we have other things going on every single day in this county. Plantation, City Commission, go to the meetings. Speak out. I got an email from somebody who worked for the city of Plantation that was going through chemotherapy and was going to lose her job because the city of Plantation was mandating vaccines.
Ridiculous.
I'm one person. I'm always only going to be one person. So even when I get elected, I'm your representative. We are in the position we are in today because we have put our full faith in people that we elected or people that we didn't elect. We would not be where we are today if all of us were engaged. And I'm not speaking just to you individually, myself included. I got a wake-up call about 1.5 years ago and said, oh my goodness, right? School boards. I'm at almost every single school board meeting. There's maybe 15 of us that show up. Every meeting. Our school board got so bad they locked us out of the building. I've been called a domestic terrorist. I've been called an insurrectionist multiple times at the school board for showing up. I've never once yelled. I've never screamed. I've never committed violence. I've never done any of that. I've stood up to speak. And members of the board have called us insurrectionists, and members of the teachers union have called us domestic terrorists. Parents, this is what is going on in Broward County. We are not in one of those places that you read about in the news that the craziness is going on. We are that place. We are strong when we come together. When I was speaking at Breck and I look out and I saw that room full of Republicans, people that care, just like in this room, imagine if every single one of us showed up to a commission meeting. Every one of us showed up and said, no, we won't stand for a mandate. And if you continue to push it, what's going to happen? Somebody in this room is going to run for that seat. And then every single person that's here is going to go door to door and knock with them to make sure that you can't do that anymore. Nobody should have to decide between their livelihood and their health. I am not anti-vaccine. I am not anti-mask. I am anti-mandate. That is a decision that you make with your physician and your family. That's it. Nobody knows you better than yourself and your doctor. Not a politician sitting up and deciding to make a choice for you. We can't sit and complain about what's going on if we don't come together. Because whether we like it or not, in Broward County right now, we are the minority. But it took a very small minority in 1776 to give this country its freedom.
Exactly.
So being the minority is not a bad thing. It's powerful. Because we have something to lose. Every one of us in this room has something to lose. If you don't work for a company that has over 100 people, you might think today you're safe. But Biden just came out and said that the next thing they're looking at is small business. What he's doing is unconstitutional. There is no question. And if anybody has a question, there's constitutions on the back, please take one. He outright said that the way that they're writing the OSHA rule is so that states and local authorities, their inconsistent laws throughout the country, cannot supersede this. Well, if anybody's read the 10th Amendment, state law supersedes federal. Any law that was not given to the federal government precisely by the Constitution That power lies in the state.
Our governor sued
Yes.
the administration.
Listen, we have an amazing governor,
We do.
okay? But I got a call from somebody today telling me that their religious exemption for their company was denied, essentially denied. They were granted on a temporary basis while they were told that they work for an at-will employment, and that they are going to look for somebody that has taken the vaccine to replace them.
OSHA calls this an occupational hazard.
Right.
That's how they're getting
Right,
around Congress.
but this has nothing to do with an occupational hazard, and you know how I can tell you that?
It's the China virus.
I work from home. Okay? I work from home. I do not interact with people on a day-to-day basis. I don't interact with people really at all outside of my computer and my phone. But do you know that I would fall under this? So tell me how that has to do with occupational safety if the only people that I'm around are the people in my house. This is not about health, it's about control.
Oh, absolutely. Gotta take the shot and shut up.
Right. And it's time that we stand up. It works. When you stand up and you come together and you're unified, it works. Look at Southwest. Look at American Airlines now, right? You've got groups of people standing up. Listen, I know we have our problems here in Broward. I know that. But I also know that when we put those little things aside and we look at big picture and we come together, we can move mountains. And that's what they're afraid of. Come together. Pick a candidate. Pick an issue. Just show up. This is how I'm going to tell you I know it's not about money anymore. In New Jersey, there's a Senate seat. A truck driver won and beat out the Senate president, and he raised next to nothing. Okay? So for so long it's been, how much have you raised? What's your dollars? And we've said for so long the system's broken. Well, now they're showing us we can break that system. Because it's not about dollars at the end of the day. It's about each person. It's about your vote, and your vote, and his vote. Because it doesn't matter how many dollars you have in the bank. If you show up at the ballot box and you vote, it doesn't matter anymore. Let's take this country back from the craziness that is going on, right? I don't want my kids going through this. I want my kids to be able to grow up in a better country than I've grown up in. And I had it pretty good as a kid. I want my kids to be able to think about the same things when they're in high school and they're in college, and think about the life that they want to have when they become an adult, and their children and their children's children, right? There's so many programs out there that if you go back and you look in history of what's happened, 1776 did not happen overnight. It took almost 10 years. And it started with a really small flame. One person that stood up against the tyranny. One person. We think about, oh, it was taxes. It wasn't just taxes. It was everything. If you're afraid to stand up because you are afraid you're going to lose things, I have news for you. If you don't stand up, there's not going to be anything to fight for anymore. And you will lose everything. So stand. Because at the end of the day, if you stand and you fight, and you lose something, you have the ability in this country to build it back. To take back what you lost and be better. That's what this country is about. Being able to do it on your own, not on the back of somebody else. So fight. Because Tuesday, for me, was a glimmer of hope. And I hope it was for everybody in this room. Because seats turned over that people thought could never happen. It wasn't just Virginia that went red. There were school board seats across this country that went red. There were House seats that went red. All over this country. And you know why you don't hear about it? Because then they know that you know that it's not over.
He didn't even say anything about the lieutenant governor in Virginia. They were saying everything about all the other women from
Right.
one, but they didn't say anything about.
It doesn't fit the narrative. Yep. It doesn't fit the narrative. They like to say that Republicans are racist. Everything that we do is racist, right? We talk about, oh, well, talking about CRT is racist. It's not. We have a history in this country. It's not all good. But to teach our children today that they are less than because of something that happened years ago is not the way we go about it. I'm Jewish. I would never teach my children to hate somebody just because they're German. That's ridiculous. Just because something happened in the past doesn't mean that those of today should be punished for it. Do we have to teach history? 100%. If we do not teach history, it will repeat itself. But we teach history as history, not as something that is still happening today. Are there racist people in this country? Are there racist people all over the world? Yes, there are. And I'm sure everybody in this room at some point has heard or come across something. But this country as a whole? No. We're not. You see something bad happen, you see a car accident, you see a child fall and get hurt. Do you think somebody stops and says, wait, let me see what's their background if I help them? What's the color of their skin? What's their religion? No. We don't do that. They're not talking about the lieutenant governor in Virginia because it goes against the narrative. How do you say that Republicans are racist when they just elected a black woman to be lieutenant governor in Virginia? And by the way, she's a Marine. Okay? She's a badass. Sorry.
And a Latino for AG.
Right. And they had a Latino for AG. Right? That's why they're not talking about any other seat. Help break the narrative.
Get involved.
Do something.
It's not gonna be.
If you are a precinct committee person, knock on doors. Go talk to every Republican. And as it gets closer, knock on every independent door. And then you know what else? I know this part's scary. Knock on the Democrats' doors too. Okay? I've never had somebody slam a door in my face yet, and I knock on every single door as I walk. Especially now. They're open to it. If there's a time, it's now.
It's too crazy.
There's been no other time in our history like today. Be a part of history. 10 years from now, be able to look back and tell your children and your grandchildren, I was a part of history. I stood up and I helped save this country.